Good afternoon. Welcome to the Callies rod finishing area. I'm here with Marshall, our lead engineer for vacuum rods. And we're going to talk to you about fasteners, the importance of installing fasteners the proper way, lubricating them the proper way, and stretching and not to yield, right? Not to yield. A lot of people have been talking about bolts just popping and snapping, this and that lately on the internet. So we wanted to dispel some of the fake news with some real truth. Marshall, so what's the first thing you need to do prior to installing fasteners into a connecting rod?
So the first thing we need to remember is that when you're dealing with connecting rods and bolts, stretch is king. So I know that on the Callies approved weight cards we saw with every set of rods, we have a torque 2 measurement, which for a set of big block 700 is a very popular rod for us, is 75 foot-pounds. We also have a bolt stretch measurement, which is 5.5 to 6.5 thousandths. So because we are a high production manufacturing facility, we do not stretch 100% of the bolts that we finish in our rods. So what we do in process is we check stretch on 10% of our finished connecting rods, and then we establish a torque 2 value, which is normally very consistent as printed on our weight cards. So you're always within a couple foot-pounds to be in this range of stretch. And for our big blocks, that's 75 foot-pounds. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna calibrate our torque wrench. So another reason you should always use stretch when you're installing rod bolts is because torque wrenches, as good as some of them are totally inconsistent. So this torque wrench is actually set closer to 78 foot-pounds, but we use a calibration unit that we check twice every day on our wrenches. So this is going to show us what we're actually at. So it's 75. And that's 74.5. So we're right where we need to be in order to stretch these bolts.
So you just said that wrench read 78 on the handle,
yep,
but 75 in the actual.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that makes Callies a little bit different is instead of just buying a torque wrench and using it to the handle specified, we check twice a day the torque on our torque meter to make sure we're always in tolerance.
So Marshall, once you have your torque wrench calibrated, what's the next step? Can you use any lube you want, just motor oil or whatever you have in the shop?
So every type of lube is different. At Callies, we 100% use ARP's Ultra Torque Fastener Assemble lubricant. This is on all of our weight cards. It shows and lists that we need to use their lubricant, and it comes with every set of bolts that we sell with packs of that lubricant.
So why can't you use any lube?
Well, all lubes are different, and ARP's even went through a couple different revisions to their lubricant. So their older ARP lube has been changed and updated to be Ultra Torque, which is our preferred method now. And the different amount of lubricity and the lubricant can change the way the bolt's affected. And that's another point. It's so important to check stretch because I can torque a bolt with one type of lube versus another, and I can receive at the same torque value, and I can get two completely different stretch amounts.
So say that again. Two different lubes, the same torque value, two different stretches.
And that is the number one reason why stretch is king when you're talking about rod bolts, because we don't care if it takes 110 foot-pounds or if it takes 60 foot-pounds. As long as you're in the correct stretch range for the fastener, you're going to achieve the clamping load that your bolt needs to hold your connecting rod together.
And we, along with ARP, do all of our testing with this lube. We don't do it with anything else. We do stay consistent with the lube that they provide.
Yes, we always use ARP's provided.
Why don't you go ahead and show us how to install some fasteners in these connecting rods?
So to start with this, we're using our Callies Ultra BLT 116 L19 material.
Okay, why are you wearing gloves?
So from ARP specifically, we're supposed to always handle L19 material with gloves on because the oils in your skin can actually introduce hydrogen embrittlement, which has caused failures in their L19 rod bolts. So we're gonna start out, we're gonna use a generous amount of lube under the head of the bolt. Might be a little messy.
Why are you putting it under the head?
Because that's gonna give you some lubricity and some lubricant underneath the head of the bolt where it's in contact with the spot face of the rod. So you don't wanna add a bunch of extra friction or a bunch of extra torsional load, or else that can also negatively impact the effects of the bolt. And then we're also going to apply some lubricant here to the threads. And I'm gonna make a mess, but that's okay because we wanna make sure we're getting enough on. So there's our bolt. Generously lubed under the head and on the threads. So the first thing we want to do when we load up our connecting rod is we want to remember that every bait is a little bit different. So we use the ARP provided stretch gauge, which is right here. This is in 5/10 increments. So we're gonna go take our loop, bolt, and start it. And what I always do is just take it down. Take it down so we're about hand tight. That way we really work the lubricant in all the threads before we get started. And we'll just give it a quarter turn here. And then we're gonna back it off. So you wanna start your stretch gauge when your head is off the mating face because you don't want there to be any pre-wear on the bolt that could introduce a little bit of stretch when you're starting. So like I said, the ARP bolts aren't 100% perfect when it comes to length because of the manufacturing processes they use there. So you want to do is you want to take your gauge and you want to zero it on every bolt before you torque it. So we'll come here and we're going to zero our gauge. Make sure that repeats. Okay. And then like we already showed, we have our torque wrench calibrated to 75 foot-pounds. So we'll go ahead and torque. And then we'll check stretch after we get finished up. And that is right at 5.5 thousandths. So that's right where we want to be, almost to 6.
Thank you for your help today, Marshall. I appreciate you showing everybody the right way to install and stretch your rod bits. We use all our bolts come from ARP. The lube comes from ARP, and we use their inspection gauges to make sure that we do what they recommend for us to do to give you the best product out there for our Ultra rods.